People watching this programme have seen the headlines about people coming to this country claiming that they'd be mistreated because of their alcoholism, despite being convicted rapists, being unable to be deported, Barry. I'm sorry,
you
but we have
you
to
can
put
change
the
the subject all you like, but
first.
I will bring you back to the point.
I'm giving you a specific example.
Because, no, you're not.
We're at over 8,000 people now making that crossing so far. That is 46% higher, ladies and gents, than this time last year. Zia Yusuf, this is one of your key tenets when it comes to reform. What do you respond to this?
Well, the first comment I'd make is that a Tory claiming that anyone has lost control of Britain's borders is like a mosquito accusing somebody of spreading malaria. I mean, the small boats problem was one that was created by the Tories. But let's be clear about Starmer's record. Since he was made Prime Minister last summer, we've seen over 30,000 people now cross the English Channel illegally via small or not so small boats, as you point out. That is, we're now at 8,000, I believe, year to date. That's almost 50% higher year on year.
8,064.
And we're not even in the summer. And obviously weather is one of the biggest drivers of these crossings. Look, people watching this at home care deeply about this issue because it represents the total catastrophic failure of political will and political capability in this country. We spend £54 billion a year on defence, a significant portion of that on a Royal Navy, and yet we are incapable of having a border that is non-porous. So this is an issue that has to be resolved. One of the reasons the issue has not been resolved is because we continue to be party to the ECHR. One of our flagship policies is that we will leave the ECHR, replace it with a British Bill of Rights, which places primacy on the rights of British citizens over the rights of foreign citizens. We will ensure that it is clear by legislation anyone who comes to this country illegally, Michelle, will not be allowed to stay and will be deported. Not only do we not have a deterrent in this country, we have a honeypot. We have the ultimate incentive, which is why these people, we should not forget these people are not coming from Syria, they're not coming from Gaza or the Ukraine, any other war zone, they're coming from France, which last I checked, millions of British people go to on holiday every summer. They're coming here. Why? Because we're a soft touch, and the Tories for 14 years and now Labour are failing to protect our borders.
Gardiner?
Well, look, there's some things in what Zia said that I would agree with. OK, he's right to talk about the Tory failure, but he's also right to say that there are pull factors here. And that's why I think it's right that what the government is doing is addressing some of those pull factors. I mean, we should recognise that actually, as a percentage of net migration, the small boats represent less than 3% of net migration. If you look at the returns, and that was one of the points that Zia made, we've actually returned more people than in the past 5 years.
Oh, Barry Gardiner, come off it now. The majority of those, you're going to quote to me 24,000 people, and I'm going to tell you, as we have this conversation all the time, that most of those, or a large proportion of those, are voluntary deportations, many of which the government didn't even have a hand on, and we had to pay for them to go back.
No, we didn't. Actually, that's not the case of the 24,000. But not only that,
are you saying the majority? With respect, Barry, are you saying the majority of those are enforced removal and not voluntary?
I allowed you the opportunity to speak without interrupting you, so I'd appreciate the same courtesy. When you spoke about making sure that everybody who came here did not have the right to stay and would be returned, you know as well as I do that one of the problems governments of both shades have had is that the countries who we believe these people have come from refuse to take them back. So it's not a case of you could come in and simply say, there you are, we've got a new policy, we're going to return everybody, because you have to cooperate internationally with the governments from which they've come, or which we believe they've come from. And that's not as easy. And if they refuse, and many of them, as you know, they've ripped up their passports, so they've been taken by the criminal gangs. So it's not quite as simple as you're painting it. You talk about our Royal Navy and making sure that we put them to work here. So let me ask you, what are you actually proposing? Are you proposing that we would blast these small boats out of the water? Are you proposing that we turn them around and send them back to France? We're trying to work with France now, and in fact I think it's next month, the French are supposed to be putting their patrol boats out to stop people leaving French waters. But we have to do that by cooperation with France. There's no point in their navy pushing them to us and our navy pushing to them. What happens as a result of that is people will die in the middle of the channel. So I'm keen that we get practical solutions here, Zia, but I haven't heard them from you.
OK, well, firstly, yes, people are dying. Hundreds of people, tragically, are dying making this journey, which is why it is a catastrophe that this problem is not being resolved. That's number one. Number two, I do have to, again, with respect, have to pick you up on the earlier point. As Michelle said, the majority of the deportees that Labour are highlighting and, quote, celebrating are voluntary and are not enforced removals. It's the lowest hanging fruit. And in terms of what we would do, well, here's a few things. Number one, as I said, we would leave the ECHR so that the industrial complex of lawyers who make money out of all of these things stop. We'd replace it with a British Bill of Rights. Number two, yes, we'd deploy His Majesty's Royal Navy on a humanitarian mission, to board and return these boats back to France from where they came. Thirdly, we would ensure that we would deport these people. And yes, are there countries that are going to push back on that? In which case, we ensure that it is the highest priority of our Foreign Office to ensure that we use a carrot and a stick. So we use, to the degree that we do have foreign aid, we have countries where we're giving, in some cases, billions of foreign aid, and in many cases, hundreds of millions each year, and we're granting visas on a discretionary basis to countries that are refusing to take back even their convicted criminals that sit in our prisons, Barry. This is totally unacceptable. The reality is we have to have a government and a prime minister that say enough is enough. This is a national priority and direct every instrument of state to solving this problem. And if we do that, I am telling you, we will solve the problem.
But then to Barry's point there, you're saying your second point there was you'll deploy the Navy onto a, quote, humanitarian issue, ferry them back to France. What if France say, well, actually, we're not going to accept those people? Barry's pushback to that is you're then going to end up with the French Navy pushing one way, the UK Navy pushing another.
So a couple of points. Number one, we've actually, prior to the general election, when we made this argument, people laughed and said, oh, well, we're going to have some sort of, standoff between navies. The reality is we saw what happened. We actually saw several boats return back to France shortly after the general election. And presumably because it worked, it never happened again. What happened? France took it back. Secondly, we would ensure, well, here's the first thing we do, Michelle, stop paying France £700 million to actually assist us with this issue. You said something very interesting there, Barry. You said France is, quote, supposed to. France and supposed to, together, in the context of these small boats, should not be taken seriously. We're paying them hundreds of millions of pounds, and they are, frankly, laughing at us. And the people watching this programme have had enough of it.
Well, I think if you look at the migration that's happening across Europe, right, coming in from Russia, coming in from all sorts of sources, the migration that we're getting in the UK, because we have the English Channel, is actually much less than many of those countries themselves are already taking in. So it's a problem that all countries are sharing, all Western countries are sharing. And therefore, I think it needs to be solved together. Now, you said something very interesting. That was we've got to get out of the ECHR, we've got to have the freedom to do this. Are you saying that you would, before creating a new convention, you would abandon the 1951 convention on refugees?
We would.
Is that your policy?
So we would do a couple of things, right? Number one, just to pick you up on the point about country. Number one, these people are coming from France, Barry. They're not coming from Gaza. They're not coming from Syria.
Sorry.
And secondly, the landmass of the United Kingdom, which really matters, is far, far smaller, clearly, than France or Germany or many other countries in Europe.
You're
That's
dodging
a really
the
critical
question.
point.
You're dodging the question.
In answer to your question, for too long, these international treaties, that convention you're talking about, when was that?
1951.
1951.
And we
shortly after
wrote
the closure of the Second World War, Barry.
Yeah.
We are living in a different world now. We are being taken advantage of. So what we would do is disapply certain aspects of those treaties so that we would be able to deport people who are coming here from one of the safest countries in the world to take advantage of British people, Barry. And we would make no apologies for doing so.
My point to you is this. I said, would you stop complying with it before you'd put something else in place. An international treaty has one very significant feature, and that is that it's international. That means you've got to negotiate with other parties. You can't simply unilaterally say...
We can disapply specific aspects of that treaty under British law, which will mean activist judges can no longer betray British people, Barry.
That treaty is very simple. It says that if somebody has a well-founded fear of persecution in their country of origin and they come to your country...
When you talk about well-founded, people watching this programme have seen the headlines about people coming to this country claiming that they'd be mistreated because of their alcoholism, despite being convicted rapists being unable to be deported, Barry. I'm sorry,
you can change the subject all you like, but I will bring you back to the point.
I'm giving you a specific example.
No, you're not, because I've asked you about the specific parts of the treaty. The treaty is very simple. It says that if you have a well-founded fear of persecution in your own country, your country of origin, and you come to a safe country, you can there claim asylum, and you have to be accepted if it's ruled that you did have a well-founded fear.
One of the things
let me finish. You were talking about people who did not have a well-founded fear of persecution. You're talking about people who came as economic migrants or refused to go back for other reasons. I'm asking you, in the situation where people are genuine refugees, genuine asylum seekers, you can't simply walk out of the treaty without creating something else. And that's the question. How would you do it?
We're going to be very clear with the British people prior to the next general election, precisely what we're going to do with all of these international treaties that betray British people. But I will answer your question. So there are a number of principles in there, one of which says, for example, that treaty, the refugee treaty you're talking about, from 1951, it basically says you cannot in any way diminish somebody's asylum claim if they came to your country illegally. And I'm sorry, that is unacceptable. If somebody comes to our country illegally from France, they are not fleeing death, they are not fleeing serious threat to their life, and we cannot put them up in hotels at the cost of billions of pounds each year. So yes, let me finish, Barry, with respect, we will disapply such clauses under British law so that activist judges cannot continue to prioritise the interests of foreign citizens over the interests of citizens of the United Kingdom.
You see, the interesting thing is what you've done is you've taken the Tory legislation, right? The Tory legislation said, if you come by a small boat, you are illegal, and therefore we will not process your asylum claim. There's nothing on that in the 1951 Convention. Now, this is where you and I might have a point of agreement, and let's try and widen that. And that is that the 1951 Convention is out of date. It does need rework, okay? But it has to be done together with our international partners. If you simply walk away, you're not going to get everybody accepting what you unilaterally...
The only people who need to accept it are the British people. Have no interest in what France thinks, given they've betrayed us. They've taken hundreds of millions of taxpayers' money and betrayed us. The only people who have an interest in this are the British people, and those are the people we're going to stand up for.
We all have an interest in a safer, secure world where people are not trying to game the system.
One of my viewers has just got in touch saying, Michelle, on Saturday, Parliament was recalled and a bill was passed in a day, quite rightfully, he says, to save primary steelmaking. He says, you know what, that's shown me that bills can be passed when there is a political will, often as demonstrated in a single day. We need this kind of political momentum and appetite and interest and focus, he says, on illegal immigration. Lots of you will agree with that.